Hi, I'm Drew.
I'm Harley.
I'm Nancy, and we're the Bound in Book podcast. You can expect a fun time, some curse words, and a lot of discussion. Our episodes will both feature guests and be conversations between the three of us.
We do intend to stay spoiler-free for the majority of our shows. Our guest episodes will feature a spoiler section towards the end. We're here to be an author, reader, and industry at large safe space to discuss books, opinions, and feelings. But we are going to keep it positive.
We want listeners to know that we are not here to bash your favorite stories or authors, but may discuss things we didn't like too. And we hope you join our discussion over on social media and enjoy the episode.
Thank you for joining us today, Natalia. We're honored to be we're your first podcast, right?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having me. It is my first. I've done some live stream chats, but nothing like this. So this is new. I'm honored.
Oh my, we're so special. I feel so special that we're your first.
Yes, you can call me the virginal FMC in this discussion.
Channeling your Briar here.
Exactly.
Natalia Jaster is a fantasy romance author who routinely swoons for the villain. She lives in a dark forest where she writes spicy tales about morally gray jesters, immortal deities, and vicious fairies. She is the author of the Selfish Myth series, the Vicious Faeries series, and the Foolish Kingdom series, which is currently ongoing. Book 4, Dare, is set to come out on August 14th, which if you're listening to this, the day it comes out is like 2 days ago. Very exciting.
I'm so excited.
I'm excited too. I'm going to finish the second book and read the third book, so I'll be in time to get Dare when it comes out.
Oh, so exciting. You will be eager to start book 3 once you get to book 2's ending because it's brutal.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
I say that with absolute no, I do not. I'm sorry.
I'm used to my author friends being cruel to me, so it's fine. It's all fine.
Not hurt by it at all.
We writers can't help ourselves.
So what is everybody reading right now?
Oh, I'm beta reading Kara Douglas's Undying Lands right now. And I'm hurting on the inside also. So
That's
we're
what
all
Jenny said too.
hurting.
I've never heard of that
Jen said
one.
that too.
It is book 2.5 in the Unraveled Fate series, and it's so good. Both of her books ended on cliffhangers, so it's a lot of pain for sure.
I can
I
imagine.
love
Is
her
that
books. I can't wait.
is that romantasy or PNR?
It is romantasy. I'm trying to think of. I'm so bad at describing books without spoiling everything. And yet we have a podcast, and here we are.
And that's why we have a spoiler
I
section.
do that too.
The first book is called Lunaria, though, and it's about this woman who's coming into her own, and she gets caught up in some royal politics and has to navigate that in the first book.
Oh, interesting.
Like I feel like the fantasy elements are not super strong in the first book on purpose. But it's like royal bachelor type games thing. It's really fun.
Ooh.
And what are you reading right now, Natalia? Besides Dare.
Oh my God, yeah, I read Dare so many times, right? I could recite it by heart, I feel. I'm absolutely I'm in love with the story, but I have read it a ton of times. You eventually, you start seeing double at this point. I'm at that point. But in addition to that, when I'm not reading through Dare and I'm taking my breaks or doing something else, I'm listening to the audiobook of Zodiac Academy Book 5. So I'm on, oh God, what is it? Cursed Fates. I'm looking at my thing right now. Yeah, Cursed Fates. So I'm on that and I'm obsessed with the series. I love it. It's so fun.
I've heard good things. That's on my list of series to read one day.
Yeah, it's great. I love how they just handle a giant cast of characters, but also they're very good at mixing darkness with humor and not taking itself too seriously, but at the same time, still getting you so emotionally invested. And they're also just great at plot twists and keeping you jumping into the next book like I can't stop. I've not read a series this fast in a very long time, which isn't saying much because I barely have time to read anyway, other people's stuff, tragically. But this one I love, and audiobooks make it a lot more possible.
I feel like we hear that from our author friends and guests a lot. They're like, I don't have time to read anything that's not mine, unfortunately, so I'm tragically behind.
Yeah, it's because we're constantly on the computer, I think, or at least for me, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, my eyes are kind of just dead at the end of the day with everything we do. So I'm just want to kind of sit and stare at the ceiling and just listen to somebody tell me a story. So I do love that. And I have been listening to uh it because I got so wrapped up in Zodiac Academy, I haven't jumped back into it, but I actually need to finish listening to the audio recording of my own book, which is Defy the Fae, book 4 on Vicious Faeries, which I've absolutely loved listening to, but I just didn't get back to the very, very end. I think because I'm procrastinating getting to the end because I don't want it to end. I just love the way the narrators perform the characters. So
Oh, that's very cool. I read the Vicious Fairies, but I haven't listened to the audio yet. I think I might need to add that to my list of things to do.
I definitely need to check it out.
It's super fun because the characters do the accents so beautifully.
Ooh. Oh, I love an accent.
You do love an accent.
There's a few in this
They're
one.
hot. With an accent.
Yes, especially when you get to Puck with his Scottish accent. I just absolutely love hearing Puck talk, and he just makes me laugh so much. When you've been away from a series for a while, you sometimes have forgotten what you've written, and at least the particulars. And so when you go back, like I go back a couple years later to hear Kiss the Fae, it just makes me so giddy. And Cerulean has this beautifully eloquent British accent. And then you've got Puck, which is very swaggering, roguish, Jamie Fraser style Scottish accent. And Elixir with his deep baritone. It's really hot. And so I love it.
I have to say, I do not often hear authors talk about enjoying like listening to or rereading their work like once it's out, once they've had a little bit of space from it. Like a lot of the time it seems to be like, oh, that's mine. I can't like talk about how much I'm enjoying it, but I'm like, it's so nice to hear you say that you're like, I'm having so much fun like listening to it.
Yeah, I could imagine that. I'm surprised a bit myself, but I'm not afraid to listen to the audiobook, I guess, because it's a different relationship that you're having with the book. It's a different medium. So I couldn't see myself sitting down and reading it with as much enthusiasm. I might be nervous. I'm going to catch typo, or, oh my God, I can't believe I left that, little plot hole in there or inconsistency or something. That totally freaks me out. But when it comes to hearing a narrator perform, I'm mostly excited, perhaps a bit apprehensive in the beginning because I don't know if the narrator is going to how they're going to actually perform. Once I get more into it, then I'm start getting really comfortable. But since we don't, I basically hear samples of the narrator from other books that they've read, and then I say, oh, I like this person. That's basically all I get unless I listen to another book where they've narrated the whole thing. So I don't know how they're going to sound during the smut scenes when they're saying dialogue, that is a bit nerve-wracking.
Nancy, what are you reading?
I am still working through The Curse of Ophelia. I did finish slaying the Shadow Prince sometime last week.
Ooh.
I also, like, just for whatever reason, sitting down with a physical book or my Kindle has been a struggle recently. So getting through, because I've been listening to the Legends of Thesmar series, getting through that has been quicker. I would probably be done with the series if it weren't for Spotify. Their stupid limit, but or finished with the ones that are out on audio, because last one's not on audio yet, but yeah, I really liked that one. I need to pick my reread of Threaded back up because arcs for book 2 are soon, so I need to finish that.
Did we say we were gonna we said we were gonna reread it together, right?
We did, and then we said we were gonna do Amanda's reread, and I started it.
I didn't. Tay still has my copies of her book. She hasn't sent them to me yet.
Well, that's rude of her.
Look, she's Nancy. She's literally sending me like 50 pounds of books. She can, if it's going to take her a little while,
fair.
It can take her a while.
She's also very busy with editing Scourged, so I don't blame her. But yeah,
she's a busy gal.
Very. But yeah, I do need to pick that back up. So I'm also still reading the Gospel of Loki. I've got both that and The Curse of Ophelia on my Kindle, and I've just been bouncing between the two of them depending on which I'm more in the mood for.
You were reading the physical book for Ophelia. I thought you were reading
I was, but the Kindle's more convenient to have with me, and so I've just been reading it on the Kindle and then flipping back through the physical book for Jenny's highlights that she put in it whenever I finish a chapter, if I have it on me.
The cutest thing ever that she did that.
It is.
I'm balls deep in Ruin right now. Like, I'm like 3/4 of the way through with the book, and I was falling asleep last night, so I had to put it down. I haven't had a chance to pick it back up. For context, not that it matters, but when we start talking about spoiler stuff, because I don't care, I'll be spoiled. I'll still enjoy it. But I just finished the battle scene in the courtyard.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at in that book.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. That's when, shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did put that together. It's I'm having the best time reading them, though, I have to tell you.
Amazing.
It's been, my partner was traveling for work like the entirety of the time I've been reading them. So I'm like, what an inconvenient time for him to be gone.
Wait, when does he come back?
He came back today. He got back at like 3.
Oh, okay. As long as he's there for Burn, that's really. There's some scenes that live rent free in my head.
Drew got a text from me at like 9 p.m. last night, or like 9:45, and I was like screaming about one of the scenes that I just read, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
It keeps getting more intense, and it keeps in terms of the chemistry and the heat level and everything. Yeah, you have Trick, which is more the sensuality and the erotic buildup, culminating in the chapter 40 there. But then in Ruin and Burn, it just they really hit the ground running.
Yeah, I'll say.
They're making up. They're making up from all that time.
Yes, yeah, and there's a specific scene in Burn that gets talked about more often. I can't say anything more. That I'm also terrible at revealing spoilers, but yeah.
Now that I've talked to you, I can run into your DMs and I'll just scream at you. Respectfully,
Yes,
but I will yell at you.
Yeah, go right ahead. I've had readers do that. They've they've DM'd me with highlights. And they're like, "Are you kidding me? What are you doing to me right now?"
One of my favorite things about coming into like author spaces, so I'm in a whole host of author discords, has been like when street teams get arcs, because we'll all be in there just screeching and yelling about everything all together. It is like truly an experience.
That sounds so fun. I've been thinking of actually having a place like that here for my ARC readers.
Well, sign me right up. I'll be the first one to join.
Yeah, I'm gonna sign up for your street team as soon as you post that link. You'll see our names right at the top.
Yeah.
I had meant to I had meant to do that today, and then I needed to work out a little technical thing. But I won't bore you with that. But yeah, I'm excited. I've never done I've never done a hype team before. I guess so I have an ARC team, but I'm just gonna streamline them both so that it's easier.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, let's dive in to some of the questions that we have here.
Yes.
And we did already start talking about the series a bit. Without giving too much away, this series really does have an awesome focus on like intellectual disabilities and neurodivergence in a
Mm.
way that is pretty novel to me. Like I have yet to see many fantasy books like touch on disabilities as the core focus of the novel. Maybe it's just like a little highlight here, like one character is like a little neurodivergent. So we were
Mhm.
wondering what inspired this series, and then specifically, why did you choose to write about the topics that are addressed in this series?
Yeah, so I've lived with anxiety for over 20 years, and that was a big part of it. I tend to, when I create the world conflict in any fantasy series, it's usually something based in reality, something that matters to me in my real life or the real world. So mental health would be foolish kingdoms, such, and in Vicious Fairies, for example, it's also the treatment of nature, the environment, the treatment of animals. So it's the same situation here, where it really came from, one, a personal place, and two, actually my research on jesters and how people with mental health conditions were treated back then. And I found it just naturally came together that way, because when I was researching jesters, which there's very little on the subject, but what I did find talked about there being two types of so-called quote unquote fools. There was the licensed fool, which was the professional jester, which is poet. And then you had, and I honestly, it's been so long since I researched this, I can't get the term. I can't promise this is the correct term. I think it was the natural fool. And forgive me for using an unpleasant term, but that's, I think, what I think that was the term. And that was usually people who had mental health conditions, and they were not treated the same as a licensed fool. They were treated the complete opposite. So you see where, you know, poet occupies one of those identities, and Miku, unfortunately, embodies the other in the eyes of this world. So it came together naturally in that way.
That's very
That,
cool.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead,
and
Nancy.
I was just gonna say that actually segues into one of our listener questions really well. Leah asked, in creating Poet, how much of him is based in historical clowning?
Yeah, a good portion, actually. I would say majority of the technical stuff, like in terms of the skills jesters had, and um the roles that they had in their job. So And when I say there was so little research on Jesters, it was basically one book that I found. Everything else was sort of a comprehensive look at the historical period, and I was mainly looking at the English Renaissance, Elizabethan era. And, they would mention jesters kind of vaguely, but nothing where it went into a deep dive about their vocation until I found one book from the 90s, which I think is the main source. I don't know if that's still the case because this book was originally, the first edition was written back in 2015. That's what was there. I don't know if that's changed. It's not a topic that you find a lot on, but that actually helped me be more focused because I was able to read a lot on the history of jesters. And it was really fascinating. They had a lot more power and influence than I had expected. They, had a really influential way of talking. They were clever, they were intelligent, they were sly. They used humor as a way to get their point across so that people wouldn't get upset even when they were contradicting them. Things like that, to the point where kings and queens considered them their darling. I don't know if this is every case, again, because it was only one book, and so the research wasn't vast. But what I read was that if they were in that position, sometimes the kings and queens wouldn't listen to their counsel. They'd be like, I don't want to hear it. Get me my jester. Kind of like, I need to talk to them. And I think it's because I remember reading the book that it had something to do with, the jesters weren't like other members of the court that were perhaps competing for an influential, powerful position or trying to overthrow the monarchy. They didn't need to worry about that with a jester. They didn't need to feel threatened in any way. So they were able to open up more trust and more faith in whatever the jesters were saying because they didn't have to fear any ulterior motive. And that put them in a pretty interesting position. They got away with a lot that other people wouldn't get away with a king and queen. I think it also has to do with them being very clever. But there's that, he's also, he's very kinetic, right? He can dance, he's an acrobat, he can, work his way around a weapon pretty hotly. And so a lot of that stuff I think is pretty close to the historical representation. Because they were so influential, they also were, not just the object of admiration, but also envy from some of the people who wanted more influence with the monarchy. They would be the subject of bribes and blackmail, which Poet mentions that at one point in Trick, where he's saying that if somebody's knocking on his door in the middle of the night, it's either going to be because that person wants to get fucked or they want to bribe or blackmail him. There's extreme differences in why they would come to his room, but they were significant. And yeah, they were, I read, sort of the rock stars of their time period. They were the most popular influencers. They were the celebrities. They were the ones everybody was talking about in the tavern. So they were this object of fear and, entertainment, but also desire. So that's a lot of that is basically Poet. The real difference between that and the fictionalized Poet is just that his clothes his style, I took away the ridiculous dumbass costume because I knew that wasn't going to work. When I thought, oh my God, when I got the idea for a jester, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I don't know of a jester MMC. And if you can just get rid of the clothes, he has all the characteristics and skills of a really hot MMC, if he can work his way around a weapon, if he's smart, if he's powerful, if he's silver tongued, all of those things, this could be an amazing guy. So let's give him some leather pants. Let's give him guy liner. Let's give him some black nails. Let's make him that Elizabethan rock star. And that was also easy to do because sometimes when they had that much power, the monarchy would give them titles and property and money and clothes. So it all just kind of came together that way. And then his segueing to verse. Sometimes he talks in verse, and his silver tongue and his seductive nature and all the touch her and die vibes, that's all more fictionalized to his character, which just comes out when I start writing, and his voice basically, like him, stole the show the minute I wrote the prologue. It clicked instantly with him. So sorry if that was a really long answer.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Leah's gonna be so excited with that answer, honestly. She's one of we've got like a group of people who like listen to every episode and they get really excited and we say, we've got this guest, please ask questions. And she just finished it. She was like, oh, they're gonna interview her, let me read her book so I can ask questions. So she's gonna be really, really excited.
Amazing. I love that. Yeah. I could talk about Poet all day. So
Me too.
and he enjoys that. He wants you to talk about him all day. That's another thing. His vanity came from him.
The ego on that man.
Yes. Yes. I love that about him too. I love what's the word? Subverting expectations. And I think that's why when I thought of a jester, I thought that is the unlikeliest, least sexy occupation I could give an MMC. Let's go for it. Because I could, it could be amazing. If I can turn it, I saw the elements that I was like, if I could turn this on its head and, make him hot, it could be amazing. I was thinking 50-50 actually. So I was also thinking this could be a disaster or this could be incredible. It's not going to be one or the other. Either he's going to come across as really hot or really ridiculous. And I'm glad it went the other way.
He's really hot. He's very hot. 10 out of 10, 1,000 out of 10.
Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't gotten to your books yet, but you just talking about Poet, I'm like, I definitely need to move these up my TBR.
Oh my god, Nancy, you're gonna love him.
It sounds like I will.
Mm-hmm. He's right up your alley.
I've gotten some people who were dubious. So like when I was just at Steamy Lit Con, and when I was pitching the book to readers who came to my table and weren't knowing what it is, I right away said, do not think of the jester that you're thinking of, because I can see it on your face. And then I had them once I started saying things like, silver tongued, leather pants, and then just showed the picture of him. I was like, that is my that's my jester. So because when you look, I don't know, if anybody ever finds inspo pictures of a jester that are hot, I would absolutely love them, because I have had so little success. If you go on Pinterest, they're either creepy as fuck or they're just ridiculous looking. And yeah, so
I definitely did force my boyfriend to paint his nails black after reading the series, because I was like, listen, there's a new thing I'm into. I really need you to do this for me.
amazing.
That is amazing.
Yes, he's a style influencer.
It's so interesting because, like, I had to be sold. Like, I read the summary of the book and I was like, okay, like, I'm gonna read it. Drew promised me I was gonna like it, so I'm gonna like it. And then I like get to the scene where we like first meet Poet face to face at the dinner when he snubs Briar, and I don't think that's really a spoiler, but he snubs Briar, and I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of hot, I guess. But then there's a following scene that takes place, and I was just like, oh, that's what we're doing. And from the moment I read that scene, I was sold. I was like, okay, well, I love him. He's my new favorite.
Oh, amazing. Yay. So
I think
cool.
that's in
I
like
really
chapter 5 or chapter 6. It's not very far into the book.
No, it's not. And I love those scenes. I love reading those scenes and I love writing those scenes where she's alone in a dark, quiet place and he's just watching her from the shadows. And she doesn't know he's there and then suddenly his voice comes out of nowhere. I did that sort of with Cerulean and in Kiss the Fae as well. Um I love those kind of scenes and I remember just being so happy and excited when he first comes into the light and they start circling each other. It kind of felt somehow very symbolic of their how this entire book was going to go in terms of their chemistry and the fact that she wasn't going to let him just walk behind her and circle around her. She turned and followed to see what he was doing. It had this equal footing right away, like, you're not just going to check me out like that, I'm going to follow you and see what you're doing. So I love that there was sort of this game to it, I guess.
We're gonna circle back around to Briar in like the spoiler section, but she is such an interesting female main character.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm really, really enjoying the journey that she's going on so far.
Oh, yeah, it's quite a growth arc for her from book 1 to book 3 for sure.
We're gonna shift gears just a little bit. We'll circle back to the Foolish Kingdoms, but is there any other projects that you have in the works that you can tell us about?
I have a few things in my head right now, and there's usually more than one. Um, well, obviously, book 5 of Foolish Kingdoms, which is Lie, which will be Aaron Aspen's story, and it depends on honestly how Dare's release goes. I always write what I'm passionate about, but I also have to balance that with business decisions. So it will come down to a few things like if Dare's released as well, if I'm also inspired enough to have everything I need to get Lie off the ground and start writing it, or if I need to refresh myself a little bit and take a pause and do something else in between. So it's gonna be a few of those things. I am planning on rebranding Selfish Myths because that series is not the same content level or adult level as the rest of my books, and I am a stickler for consistency, and so I do want to rebrand that one and get it to this very spicy level. I'm actually, when I have time, I'm reading through the books now and making notes as I go and stuff. So that's another thing. It won't be as extensive as Foolish Kingdoms at all, but it will be similar in terms of the world building will be more refined, adultified, darker, and definitely a lot smuttier. So I will be working on that. I'm working on that in snippets slowly here and there. And then a new series, which is I'm I'm definitely starting to get sparks for vampires. So
Oh my god.
I'm really, really, really excited about some ideas I have. A couple nights ago, I was just starting to write down words, and I've been thinking about vampires for, I think, I want to say since Trick was released. I might have already started to be thinking about this. I would love to read vampire canon, the classics, everything from that to the stuff that my indie friends are coming out with these days, so that I can get a real broad idea of what's out there with vampires. But my head is going in the Victorian fantasy direction, and I have a lot of ideas. I've never written the Victorian period before, and I do like it, and I love the idea of sexual repression of that time. So I think something like that combined with vampires would be really, really interesting. But I don't know anything else yet. I'm just brainstorming at this point. I do know I would love it to be a duology, so not something extremely long, but definitely each individual book would be long in and of itself, and it would be one couple.
Love vampires, so I'm in favor.
I'm super excited about it. I am partway through the Vampire Lestat, which is where I started with my, I want to read everything from just Dracula to uh, oh god, now my mind is going blank on something that's current vampires. But
Right.
was it Filthy Rich Vampires is one?
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
Yes.
one that
I've
just
seen that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like just really read all of the way across the board, but I am partway through the Vampire Lestat now, and I just love him. So um that's probably going to be another source of inspiration. Some Lestat vibes.
Well, Anne Rice has just such a deep world that she created.
Yes. Yeah.
So
It's super dense. Yeah.
I feel like it's impossible to look at anything that's like more, for lack of a better word, modern vampire story and not see influence from her stories in there. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Um I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I started with and I think that's where I just jumped into the book was that my husband and I watched Interview with the Vampire. And I'm not well versed on whether that's even close to the book. I don't know, but I did just love the film. And so I was like, okay, I need to read more because I just liked how he gave me such trickster vibes. And perhaps that's why I liked him so much.
You know who has really sexy vampires? And it's not well, it is a book, but we don't talk about the books. That's like the worst fantasy series I've ever even heard of in my life. So sorry to anyone who's a fan of it. The Vampire Diaries.
I've
Are you
not.
a Vampire Diaries hater?
No,
Oh,
but the books
really?
are so bad.
Oh, I've not read it, and I've only watched a few episodes. Not that I wasn't interested, I just didn't go very far. I don't know why. I think I drifted away.
So I actually got into the Vampire Diaries through one of the spin-offs. It's called The Originals, and it's about the original vampire family. And that's geared much
Hmm.
more towards like an adult audience. So like our main group of vampires is like in their late 20s, early 30s instead of like teenagers in high school.
I see.
And they do really fun things with the lore in that series, but no, the shows I think are actually very good, and they're just the lore in that world is really rich and really complex. It's really fun.
Nice. Yeah, I need to check that out for sure, especially if I want to do this. But yeah, I'm leaning really heavily towards vampires, and who knows if I feel like I need to pivot after Dare and just take a little bit of a break from the Foolish Kingdoms world so that I can come back to it with a, kind of refreshed perspective, that would very likely be where I head.
I mean, I would eat that shit up. That sounds so fun.
It does, yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the magical part. That's the magical stage of being a writer, when you just start brainstorming and getting ideas and you have this beautiful image in your head and it's all so exciting and enticing. And then you got to write it. And then but it's one of my favorite stages. It's just to brainstorm because I guess anything's possible. Of course, when you get to the writing, if you because I clicked so well with Poet, I've had kind of amazing experiences writing the first draft, so I would look forward to it as well.
We are going to get a little bit more into like your writing process here in just a sec, but
Mhm.
before we do, we have one more listener question from Leah. And She asked what either 3 books or 3 authors that have influenced your writing the most.
The most. Oh my God. Okay, so I don't know about the most, but one of the types of writing that makes me want to write is beautiful writing. So some of the most beautiful books I've ever written are from people like Madeline Miller, who wrote The Song of Achilles and Circe, which is, I want to say, Greek mythology. If I'm not mistaken, is Achilles Greek mythology? I think so. So
Yeah.
yeah, or is it Roman mythology? I think it's Greek mythology. Forgive me if
It
I'm wrong
is.
here. Okay, cool. So her books are just stunning. They're very quiet. There's a lot of quiet strength to them, is how I like to think of it. And the prose is just lovely. I just finished The Familiar by Lee Bardugo.
Oh,
And
Yeah.
I loved that. She blew my mind because I've read her Grisha series, and I've read Six of Crows, which I also enjoyed very much. And particularly Six of Crows, but it felt very different, not only because it wasn't young adult, but it was so much more proseful than I had expected from. I almost felt like I was reading a completely different author. Um,
Have you read Ninth
and
House by
I
her?
have not, but now I want to jump into it for sure.
It's phenomenal. I was wondering because I've heard I own her other books. I own Six of Crows, and I own oh my God, I'm totally blanking on what the other trilogy is, but I
Shadow and
own
Bone.
yes, I own
Yeah.
yeah. I own those. Haven't had a chance to read them yet, but I read Ninth House and the second book in that series, Hellbent, and I was like, oh, this is like dark and creepy and so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get those. You would get those vibes also from her latest release. It's fantastic. And I mean, I guess she has a collection of fairy tales. I forgot what that one's called.
Oh.
Like short stories. I can't remember what it's. I can't. Oh God, The Language of Thorns, I think it's called. Possibly. And I do think that one was proseful, if I remember. But this one just stunned me. I was hooked from the first page. And when I read beautiful writing, it just makes me want to write. So those were a couple of authors that really stuck with me. And then in terms of things like writing sexual tension and chemistry and controversial conflicts, I would 100% say the Captive Prince series by C.S. Pacat. And if anybody is on my newsletter or they've seen me be asked this question before, I always recommend that series. It is, I will say, very trigger heavy. So it's not for the faint of heart, but it and it has some triggers in there that usually are a deal breaker for me. But the way that CSB Cat handles them is so well done in a way where I did not feel like I needed to stop reading. And it's fantastic. It's my favorite fantasy series, and it has been for probably 8 years since I've read it. I I'm obsessed. So I do love that series. Her writing is rather different than mine. It's not as lyrical. It's a lot more straightforward, but the sexual tension between the two characters, and it is male is off the charts. It's incredible. So those are some of them. That's three. Yes.
yes. Oh, I'm excited to read The Captive Prince. I'm adding that to my TBR. That's
Yeah, I just wrote it down because I'm like, oh, that sounds like it's gonna be good.
yeah, yeah, it
It's
does.
It's so good. It's kind of it's basically sexual slavery. So two opposing kingdoms, one of them gets kidnapped and sold as a sex slave to the prince of the enemy kingdom. And there isn't any non-con between them because the prince who takes him as a slave has different intentions for this guy to make him suffer that have nothing to do with that. But the world conflict is about sexual slavery, and that's why I say it's pretty trigger heavy, but it's described in such a way that's it's kind of a little bit more removed, so you're not immersed in any of those scenes where you feel like this I can't take, because that's usually a deal breaker for me. But their chemistry is just so fantastic, and the plot twists and the political um, dealings between the nations is all just, it's like reading a game of Risk. It's really um, it's really powerful. But yeah, the two of them, it was just, I was suffering waiting just for the first kiss, which took longer than any first kiss that I've ever read in my life. And by the end of it, I almost fell off my couch in my excitement because I was kicking my feet in the air and going nuts, and I almost fell off the couch when it finally happened. So yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. That sounds lovely.
It's so good, yeah.
So I want to segue a bit more into talking about your writing, and I want to start with, do you have any writing / publishing advice for new authors or aspiring authors?
Oh my gosh. I usually tell new readers a few things that jump into my head is, first, find your tribe, find
Mhm.
that group of authors that you can connect with and help each other out, inspire each other, answer each other's questions, and support one another. That's just so essential in, no matter what genre you're writing in or what stage you're in your writing, or if you're traditionally published or indie published. I think it's just so important. I can't make certain decisions anymore without posting in the Facebook group and asking people about this or that, what have you done in this situation? How's your experience been here? That kind of thing, and getting different answers from my peers from multiple levels of experience. And a lot of the times you can find those groups on Facebook, and that's where we, come together for different things, and just it's so invaluable. So that's a big one. I would say, if you are not sure if you want to be indie published or traditionally published, to really research the differences. And that's another thing you can ask, because in those groups, there are people who are hybrid, who are both, who are one or the other, who are, um, have more experience, have been around for a while, and people who are new. And you can always just post and say, I'm new, I want to start, and I don't know where to start. Does anybody have any advice on what your experience has been, indie versus traditional, or something like that? I think it's really, really important, because I think people still um, assume perhaps that, I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily true, but just from my perspective, I think some people still assume that traditionally published is the ultimate way to go. And that's not necessarily the case. It depends on what your goals are. I guess that's what you have to identify first. Do you want to be the person who does like all of the business decisions? Do you want all of the control, but also do you willing to wear like 12 different hats, and work a half a dozen jobs at once, because you will be.
Yeah.
And so just define how much work you want to do. Sometimes you may redefine that as your career progresses. You also don't have to choose one or the other, because some authors are hybrid. And I guess I'm a kind of one. I don't feel like I'm that way. I have a traditional publisher for audiobooks, but not for ebooks and paperbacks. I just don't have the time, and audiobooks are very expensive. So I go with a traditional publisher for that and for translations. But otherwise, I think it's really important to just research the differences and compare them to your goals so that you're not just jumping in and signing a contract because you're so excited, or you think that one route is the only route and you haven't considered the other route. It's like, if you're going to say yes to something, be sure you know what you're saying no to as well. And I think that's really important. And then be flexible, because this gig requires you to learn new things. There's a new social platform you gotta, but at the same time, don't overwhelm yourself. There's so much. I mean, there's just so much. And be patient, because sometimes, it takes. I've been doing this for 10 years, and so, for some people, you can be very, very lucky and succeed right away. But a lot of the times, for that one successful person, there are hundreds of other authors who are still, still not there, still not where they want to be. And it takes a while. So you might want to pack a snack and just be patient, and don't compare yourself to other authors. Compare yourself to how you've grown. That's not always easy to do, but it certainly helps. And
that's definitely easier said than done.
Yes, it certainly is. It's something that I still have to remind myself of, because we're human. But it is a helpful way to think about things and keep them in perspective. And there are also things like just researching your market, but balancing that with your passion. So it's a lot of things. It's like balancing the business with passion, but I feel like that all comes with a learn as you go rule of thumb, I would say. So that's a jumble of answers, but those are the ones that came into my head.
And on your writing process, I know we have a few listeners, and I'm also a writer, so it's a question that I'm curious about as well. When it comes to your writing process, on the scale of plotter to pantser, which one where do you feel you fall? Are you more a plotter, more a pantser, somewhere in between?
I'm in between, I think, because I start with brainstorming anything and everything that pops into my head. Settings, dialogue, conflicts, character traits, all of it. Basically, it's a real mishmash. And then once I get all my thoughts in order and I start to see the things that are clicking with me, I'll put all of that together and the story will start to come. Sometimes there's also just something that's a springboard, like Court Jester Princess was the place where I started. And and I can't remember. Well, Vicious Faeries was Labyrinth, so Labyrinth was the inspiration for Kiss the Fae. But after that, I start to write down. I'm pretty structured with the outline, so I will have things like the one thing that's jumpstarts the whole story in the beginning. Like what is that one thing that happens that gets everything going, and then the three major plot twists, if I can come up with those, and then potentially the big climactic scene, and maybe the ending. I might have something like that, or I might have a general idea and I'll put those in, and then I'll fit in between that, like this scene here, or this little plot twist here, or this, this whole situation evolves in this point. At this point, I'll just kind of have a general outline like that. It'll be structured, and then
fill in the blanks as you go.
And then fill in the blanks as I go. And not usually, always, I will be in the middle of the book and things will pivot unexpectedly, because either I have an epiphany or something I realize isn't going to work. The characters don't want to go in that direction. The story doesn't want to go in that direction. And so the outline will always change and evolve as I'm writing.
I feel like I had another question on that topic, but I forgot it.
I know we're about to transition to stuff that might have spoilers, and I just remembered there's a question that we have asked our last several guests, and it's been really, really fun, but we forgot to put it on the list. And it's, if you were to be a contestant on The Amazing Race with any of your characters from the Foolish Kingdoms, who would you pick?
Okay, well, I have to first ask, what's The Amazing Race?
Oh, okay. Okay, so
I live in a fantasy world where I never come out. So
cool. So The Amazing Race is a reality show where you and typically a partner have to go and do specific tasks in specific places around the world, and you have to figure out, like, there's a whole bunch of like obstacles in your way, basically.
Oh shit. Okay. So who I would choose to part from any series or a specific one?
Specifically from the Foolish Kingdoms.
Shit. Okay. That was my automatic was like, okay, it's got to be someone from Vicious Faeries. Okay, but if it was from, then I say only because the sisters play the games and have to go basically across fairy in order to succeed. But
one of them would be perfect then.
It would be, yeah, it would almost be cheating because I could be, pretty much anyone in that one. But from Foolish Kingdoms, give me a second to even remember which characters I've written. Because I'm trying to let me step back for a second. Okay, so if it's is it like a survival game then?
Not exactly survival. Like, some of it is races where like your physical fitness will be put to the test. Some of it is like cultural stuff where you're like doing a task that's like culture related. Some of it is I don't know.
Like brain games?
I'm
gonna be honest with you guys, I've never watched the show either. I've just been going along every time.
Okay, so I've watched a handful of episodes, but we've gotten such fun answers out of this. Well, actually, here, let's switch up. Have you watched Fear Factor before?
No. I've heard of it though.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, so I'm torn between Poet and Jaren for this one. Because if you need some physical skills, either one of them would be fine. If you need to be playing any kind of brain game, that would be hands down Jaren. On the flip side, Poet's really good about navigating social challenges. So I'm actually, and Poet is smart. Jaren's more smart in terms of a lot of scientific stuff. So I kind of think I would want Poet. Also, he'd be so much more fun than Jaren.
Have I met him yet?
He's not in.
I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
You will meet him in book 3. He's the Prince of Winter.
Okay.
So yeah, his story is book 4. Yeah, it's when you get to Burn book 3, which is the conclusion of Poet and Briar's story, you will be introduced to the next couple, which is the Prince of Winter and a captive of Summer, a born soul from Summer.
Okay, exciting. Okay.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
I feel like he'd be a good. Yeah, I don't know much about this. I really don't know much about the contest either, but I feel like Poet is skilled in many ways. I feel like he'd be a good partner.
That's who I would pick, because if nothing else, you're gonna have such a good time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You're gonna have something good, good time. He'll make you laugh, and he's really easy on the eye. So even when you're, in a dangerous situation, at least you get to look at something handsome while you do it. But I think he's also he's got such a range of skills that I think it helps, physical, social, and and he's smart and he knows how to play games, and so I feel like, yeah, he's being and very deceptive. So I think I would choose him for sure.
Okay, that reminds me of another question we've asked previous guests. Um, fuck, marry, kill,
Oh yeah.
poet, Jaren, and heir.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I
Wait,
did this.
poet who?
Jaren.
Oh, okay.
Jaren. I did this game in my Facebook group and on Instagram, and it was really fun to see everybody's responses. So, why am I taking so long on this? It should really be a no-brainer. Fuck poet, marry heir, and kill Jaren.
Yeah,
At least
that makes sense.
because I think it. Well, I'm also thinking now maybe maybe not. Maybe I would actually switch this around, and here's my reasoning. Maybe it would be fuck Jaren because he is hot, and marry poet because then you get to fuck him anyway, and then kill heir
True.
because he's just going to go to heaven. So heir's a total angel, so he's just going to go to heaven, or they're going to reincarnate him because fate is just going to be like, this guy's just too good and too honorable. We'll just give him a couple more lives. So that would maybe be even more of my cheater answer. I think my trickster answer. I think
Very on brand.
Wait,
yes,
because I also read Vicious Faeries, I also need to know fuck, marry, kill, cerulean, puck, and elixir.
Oh my god, that's a harder one. Well, none of them can be killed because they're immortal.
Oh, well, make him move away from you forever.
Well, then again,
Banish.
Technically, they can die in battle. So I did model that after. I think I modeled that after the rule in Tolkien, where elves, the only way they can die is of a broken heart or slain in battle. I think that. So I kind of went with that with Vicious Faeries, not the broken heart, but the die in battle. So let's see, Puck. Okay. I would marry Cerulean. Fuck Puck. Oh my god, that rhymes. And and kill Elixir, even though I love him, but he makes potions, so he probably would know how to swallow something before he dies that will bring him back to life anyway.
That's too true.
Yeah.
Love that. I have such a crush on Puck. Puck is my number one all day, every day.
Oh, I love everything that comes out of his mouth. You definitely need to listen to the audiobook if you want to hear his Scottish accent. It's just so, yeah, he's swaggering and sexy and roguish and also just so damn funny as well. Like he's got that balance like poet where he can say something that would just make you melt, but in the next breath he'll say something that just makes you laugh. You just can't help yourself. So yeah, and I love his I also love the antagonism between poet and Jaren for that reason. But yeah, Puck is he's so much fun, and I think when I listen to the three brothers on audiobook, I'm just their chemistry is fantastic.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm gonna start making that like my downtime audiobook when I need just something to listen to.
Yeah.
Hey y'all, so there actually are some slight spoilers for this next section, mostly for the first book in the series, Trick. So proceed with caution. Okay, so you'll need to tell us if there are any spoilers with this question, but we were wondering what made you want to rewrite and republish the Foolish Kingdom series?
Okay. So when I finished the series, I started to feel, I mean, I would almost say shortly after I published Trick, I started to feel like I wanted things to just get spicier. And so I pushed it a little bit more when I got to Lie. At the time that was book 3, because the original series was 4 books. It was Trick, Dare, Lie, and Dream. And then when I got to Dream, I pushed it even more. And by the end of that, I think I went on to Selfish Mist after that, and I kept just pushing it and pushing it. And I think I just came to the realization afterward, before I started Vicious Faeries, that I think I had found my voice. It had just evolved even more in terms of adult content, and I just made the decision I want to write full throttle spice. I don't want to be held back by anything. I want 18 plus. I want things to be as spicy as I want them to be, because that's what I love reading. And I think a part of me regretted not giving that to Poet and Briar and Jared and Flair and the rest of the couples. After I finished, like halfway through Vicious Faeries, I want to say when I was writing Hunt the Fae, I think around that time I started to get inspired also to write more about Poet and Briar. And I couldn't get that out of my head. And so I just decided I'm going to rebrand. And I mean, I had already decided to rebrand actually for Vicious Fairies, but halfway through that, I decided I wanted all my books to just be all rebranded. I didn't have very many series total anyway, so I didn't see at the time I didn't see it taking this long. I thought it was gonna be a lot quicker. So I will say that, but I'm glad I didn't know at the time, because I wouldn't have wanted to be discouraged. It's been a fantastic experience going back to this, but when I was finished with Vicious Fairies, I was like, yeah, I'm, oh no, wait, I was already working on Trick. I was already working on the Trick Reband while writing Defy the Fae. I was hopping between them. That's right. That was intense. So I had already made that decision. Yeah. And so I decided I wanted to just redo all of them and add 2 more books of Poet and Briar, so that they would have 3 books, and those 2 new books would kind of basically wedge themselves between Trick and Dare. So it would reorder the series from 4 books to 6, and then it became Trick, Ruin, Burn, Dare, Lie, and Dream. Yeah, it was both a creative decision and a professional decision. I would say it was both of those things. I didn't want to just leave my other series as upper YA, and I was inspired to continue. So that's how that started. I like being consistent. It's just something I can't move away from. So I always want readers to, it was kind of a long-term thing as well. Like I wanted readers who discovered me to look back at my backlist and see covers that are consistent, a tone and a mood that's consistent, and know when they're reading a book from me, they know what kind of spice level they're going to get. They know it's what kind of level of darkness versus lightness, because I'm not full on dark. I'm not full on light. I'm dark-ish, I would say. So yeah, that was the main reasons why I rebranded.
I actually have 2 kind of, this is like a kind of a 2-parter question. So the first part is did the plot lines that are in Ruin and Burn, were those all, or not all, but were they like shoved into one book in a Trick, or did you just like flesh out additional stuff for the 2 added books? And then the second part of the question is, I would love to know some of the key differences between the original and the republished versions, especially like I would love to know what the original version was like, because you like you said, it was upper YA, so like you weren't so horny
Right.
about everything the whole time.
No, I felt a little bit repressed. It wasn't, I was happy after it came out, but then, within, I don't know, within that year, I think I started to feel like something wasn't as I had wanted it to be. But I just moved forward. I said, well, I'll just push the rest of the series and slowly start to push that envelope a little bit. But So Ruin and Burn are, yeah, they're 100% new. They actually aren't anything fleshed out from Trick. Well, originally, Trick ends where they're going to. Trick originally ends where they're headed to Autumn, and then Dare takes place years later in the Kingdom of Summer, and Jared and Flair's story just starts, and it's a you've never met them before. You're just seeing their story just start. And then Poe and Briar show up towards the end. It was kind of like that, and then it slowly becomes an ensemble. But there were these years in between the end of Trick and the beginning of Dare that were left open to interpretation. What happened when they got to Autumn? What kind of problems did they encounter? What struggles did they have as a couple and with Briar's Nation? And so that's when I started to get ideas. So let me write about those years. Instead, it became not the span of as many years as I thought it would be. Ruin takes place, I think, across maybe a month or so. Not very long. It starts right when they have left Autumn. It picks up right where it picks up in the carriage from the end of Trick when they're headed to her kingdom, and then from between Ruin and Burn, 3 months passes, which that would be a spoiler of the ending of Ruin, and then Burn, I think, takes the epilogue of Burn is about a year later. So, and in Burn you meet Jared and Flair. I wanted to introduce the couple early, which was really exciting to build that ensemble relationship more quickly and introduce the next couple so that people could be excited for Dare. So yeah, and then the differences between, for example, the original Trick and I can't even talk about Dare, but the original Upper YA was open door smut, but it was it was shorter, the scenes. It was glazed over a bit more. When I went full throttle with adult rebrand, words like cock and pussy started coming out. And I started to write long. I mean, I have a thing. I can't write short smut scenes. I want them to be long and very descriptive. And I just go for it. And I have a weird threshold where I'm like, oh, if it's only 10 pages, it's a really short scene for me. So,
Actually, that's really, sorry to interrupt, but that's really funny that you specifically bring that up, because my partner was asking about who we were interviewing on the show tonight, and I was talking about your books, and I was like, she has some of the longest smut scenes I've ever read in anything, and I was like, they're like 3 or 4 chapters worth of writing,
yes.
and it's just like the same scene.
Yes. Yeah, and Trick, and that was one of the other differences, is that that scene does originally, like, the heart of Trick, I wanted to keep. I wanted to honor that. I was not going to change anything about the world conflict. I wasn't going to change the trajectory of the story. I ended up extending scenes, adding new scenes in between. I refined the world building. It was a little bit too much world building in the original. I gave Kingdom's signature colors and some facets that didn't feel as adult or as moody or as dark. And I instead, gave the seasons things like, this overall characteristic where spring is very sinful. Originally, it was just a very playful, whimsical place. I brought in the dark element with, it's a lot about sex. It's a lot about, because spring's the season of, reproduction, I guess. So I was just thinking in that way, like, what are the personalities? So those are some of the things I changed. And definitely, I added more spice scenes. I added a lot of the spice scenes are new. I think the only two that were in the original was Poet going down on Briar, and the scene on Lark's Night in chapter 40. But that scene was a lot, both scenes were a lot shorter. They were not as descriptive as at all. They were, closer to the surface. And they certainly didn't span 2 chapters like chapter 40. I think it was chapter 39 and 40. Don't quote me. But so Trick was originally, I want to say 90,000 words, and the final version of the second edition became 145,000 words, something like that.
Oh,
So it's
that's a big difference.
about 55,000 words difference. Yeah, and a lot of the existing stuff was changed too. So I just adultified. I even changed their ages. They were younger in the original. And the ferret Tumble, just as a little note, was not Niku's sidekick in the original version. He was Poet's sidekick. And when I went and redid this, I just didn't feel like that made any sense. One, because it doesn't fit in adults, I mean, he's adorable and I like him, and he was kind of the one that got around the castle for Poet. But I thought, well, I don't think in hindsight, and I love Tumble's role. He had a bigger role in in the original. It had that youthful kind of feel, and it doesn't have that youthful kind of feel anymore. But Poet doesn't need a ferret sidekick. Niku does, because Niku's by himself with his grandmother in this cottage hidden with no friends. And he needs a companion to keep him company and keep him happy. The kid needs people around him. He's a social child. So it made no sense that Poet would have kept Tumble and not left him for his son. And so I changed that. And also it negated Poet's ability to navigate the castle, the shadowed halls, and get people's secrets. He doesn't need an animal familiar to do that. He can do that on his own. Originally, Tumble left Briar the ribbon. It's way more enticing if Poet does it, and he somehow got into her room. So these are things that, as I've grown as an author, I've just learned what works better, I guess, for a story and what's more compelling, and it just fit better to the adult version. So there's just some things that changed, and then there's a shit ton that is different with Dare.
How old were they in the original, the OG?
I want to say Briar was, I think I always made them of age because of the sex scenes. So I think Briar was 18 and Poet was 19. I think I just bumped their ages up a couple. I think Briar's 20 at the beginning of Trick, and Poet's 21 or 22.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was cautious about, I wanted to bump their ages up a bit, but because this was just such a new terrain for me, I didn't, and I already had hardcore fans. I didn't know how attached they were going to be to the original and how they were going to feel about this many changes. So I just nudged the ages a bit in that direction. I also know that this is a saga more than just this, like a series that takes place over a few years. This series takes place from the time that Niku's 4, it ends around when he's 21 or 22. So it's a long, yeah, because he gets his own story in Dream. Book 6 is his story. So
okay, I think I did know that.
Yeah.
I think I talked about it with Drew before, but
okay.
Yeah, I definitely didn't shut up about that and may have spoiled the fact that Niku lived during Trick.
Which
Yeah.
question mark? Was I supposed to think he died? Because I never thought he died.
Well, I don't know if we were supposed to think he died, but I think we were like unsure if he was gonna make it out when he got taken. And I was like, yeah, and he
Oh,
gets his own book. So I'm like, okay, well,
Oh,
I
you mean,
always
obviously
I
he'll
always
be
assumed he
fine.
was making it out.
That's
do you
probably
mean
a good assumption.
do you mean when he's when he's purchased by Reese?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah, he does get his own book in Dream, and I always wanted to bookend it that way because I love the idea of starting with the father and ending with the son, and having the son get the story that his father and his Poet and Briar fought for, because that was the ultimate goal. for him to live freely and to love who he wanted and have that freedom to love, not as a, as a person who's scorned in this world, but as any human being. So it's the ending that Hohenbriar would have wished for, and I wanted him to have that, and I thought that would be a lovely way to end it. Although I am getting readers who are now nervous about me writing an adult romantasy with Nico. They're like, I don't want Nico to grow up. He's not allowed to get older. And I totally get that, especially since I know who Nico ends up with, and you want him to end up with someone perfect and as good as him. And I can't promise that's going to happen.
Oh my god, my mouth is agape right now. Well, I can't wait to see what's gonna happen with Niku. Oh my god. Well, we all know
Yeah,
he'll end up. Do you believe in happily ever afters? I feel like that's a yes.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Drake,
Yeah, of course.
please
I mean,
believe in
yeah.
happily ever afters.
I mean,
I-
some authors just really like to hurt us. I have read your other series, so I know that I was happy at the end and things worked out, but you never know.
Yeah, no, I also want my readers to be, assured that they'll have a painful journey, but they're going to get a couple that has earned an AGA for sure. So
I read a book. It's a standalone romantasy. It's marketed as a romantasy, like as a fantasy romance book. And they set up this huge thing for fated mates. And then like the third to last chapter, she kills off the male love interest. Like kills him off and he stays dead.
oh no. Oh my God, that's painful.
I was
Is it
devastated.
standalone?
It's a standalone.
Oh my
What?
God. That would destroy me.
Yeah, and the epilogue like establishes that like she wound up having a happy life. Well, yeah, but then her fucking mate died though.
Oh
Mm-mm.
my gosh.
No.
Anyways, I obviously didn't vocalize that to the author because that'd be fucking rude, but I was so upset.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, you won't have to worry about that with me. They'll have scars at the end for sure. Hearts break all over the place in this series, but they will always get their happy ending.
Great, I can deal with a heartbreak.
Yes. I would say though to just avoid and I would recommend this to readers who are listening, to avoid the Goodreads page reviews for the originals, because I always put a warning at the top. I have this on trick in the Goodreads page, and I stay away from Goodreads because it scares me there. But the I put a warning on top that says don't, pay attention to reviews or before this date, because that's for the original version. Goodreads doesn't remove those reviews, so it's an archive. So you can see the reviews for Lie and for Dream, and you will be very confused because the story changes so much that there are things that are in there that weren't in the original. There are things that were in the original that were cut. So I just try to recommend, you will just be totally confused at some things if you try and pay attention to the reviews from the first editions. You can read them, but then you'll probably get spoilers, and it won't, your expectations will be definitely different.
Good to know. I
Yeah.
definitely saw something that I wasn't supposed to see, but I've already forgotten about it. We don't talk about that.
Are
Actually,
the
I
original
don't.
books still in circulation?
No, they're unpublished. But some
Okay.
people have, every once in a while I get someone who will contact me looking for a copy, and I don't necessarily know where to point them other than, third-party sellers. And then you have to be careful about what condition they're in. And I did have a few different covers for Trick from the very beginning, and the same thing with Dare. So you might see a listing for the cover you're expecting, and then you might get something that isn't what's shown. At least that's happened to me when I've, done that on Amazon for old books that I was looking for a specific cover, and then I got a completely different one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, that wraps up our like light spoiler questions. Nancy, do you want to stay or do you want to go for the spoiler section?
I think I'll stay just because
Okay.
how slow I'm reading, I'll probably forget the spoilers by the time I get there.
Fine.
You can block them out.
Several of the other episodes, we've just been like, okay, this is spoilers. Bye, Nancy. You can go. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so this is the spoiler section. Everyone who hasn't read the first 3 books in the Foolish Kingdom series, see yourselves out. We don't want to spoil you.
Me and Nancy are fine being spoiled. You can stay.
That's true, unless you're like Nancy or like Harley, because Harley hasn't read Burn yet. So, but we're gonna talk about it anyway because there are things that I need to know.
Okay.
Okay. Our first question for the spoiler section. So we see a good portion of Briar's character development coming through with the spice scenes throughout all 3 books. And I was wondering, how do you approach writing the spice scenes, keeping plot and character growth in mind?
One of the main drives is, I think, the characters' personalities, uh, because that just informs everything about their point of view, the tone in which they speak, their mannerisms, what they're comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with, their experience level. So that's a big part of it. And it also depends on where the couple is in the story, in the romance arc. That'll inform what kind of sex scene we're getting. Is it at that point in the book, is it a hate sex scene? Is it a, first time? Is it exploratory and erotic? So that will also dictate a lot of how the scene goes. I mean, with Briar, she's a really good example. I mean, she starts off not experienced at all versus poet. And so there are things like, for her, it has to start very exploratory and very erotic. And he opens up a lot of sensuality in her. We don't get any of the real kinky stuff until we get to Ruin and Burn. Uh, until then, it's more an awakening. And she has a different way of, it also depends on the point of view we're in when the sex scene happens. If we're in Poet's point of view, he will use pussy and cock from the very beginning. He'll be very descriptive and very graphic. But with Briar, she doesn't say any of those words until she starts to get comfortable partway through Trick. And there's that scene where he's coaxing the words out of her. Because she's a bit timid and thinking that it's, worried that it's crude. And he, in his very sensual way, shows her that it's not. She could be comfortable with him and say what makes her comfortable and discover what's comfortable for her. So that's, I think, when you know your characters that well and you know their journey that well, that helps a lot with what kind of scene. Now you're getting with Jared and Flair, it's a lot more extreme enemies to lovers. There is legit hate on an intolerance level, especially from Jaren, and hate from her side because she's been a captive for her whole life and treated like a non-human. So there's a scene where it's just hate smoke between them because there is a hate-fueled attraction at the same time. And so it I think it comes across pretty naturally what you're going to do, and then the fun stuff is when I get to certain scenes, what, setting is this going to be in? Where are we going to have this happen? Is it going to be on a table? Is it going to be on the floor? Is it going to be standing up? All those kind of what position. And I once looked up sexual positions because at the point we get to Vern, I've run out. And I actually needed to consult a list of images, a list of positions, like with diagrams and stuff, trying to find what position we haven't covered with Poet and Briar, because I wanted it to be something experimental. It was in the relic vault, in book 3.
Mhm.
So when he's wearing the mask and he's following her through the relic vault, and I was like, I want something a little bit more complicated of a position, without it being ridiculous. So I had to look it up at that point. Briar's completely, like her, like Poet in that way. She's very open. And another thing that was really important with Briar in the first book, though, with that sexual awakening, which I definitely wanted to emphasize, and I did this with Juniper in book 2 of Vicious Fairies with Hunt the Fae, is that when she has her first orgasm, it is not with a man, it is with herself. And that's because those two characters are very similar in terms of their level of experience, their sense of propriety, their level of experience, not just with other people, but with themselves. And I felt like it was really important not to make that moment about what the MMC could give them. It was about what they could give themselves. And I felt like that was just so important. So you don't need a scene like that, for example, with Lark in book 1, because Lark is very much the experienced FMC in that book. So you're not going to have any timid, shy female or anyone who's inexperienced, who's not, who's like not used to saying certain words or things like that. So yeah, does that answer the question? I think I kind of on a tangent.
No, definitely. It definitely
Okay,
did.
cool. Okay.
I wanted to, like, kinda jumping off a few things you said. Did you anticipate, um, was it chapter 22 in Burn? The pegging scene? Did you anticipate that being
No.
as, like, insane? Like, I feel like, that's probably the scene that you said readers came to you about, right?
Yes, it is. Uh, I did not expect that scene to happen, and if I recall correctly, I might have even talked to my Facebook group about this, and I told them, guys, I want to do a montage scene, like a montage chapter of different things that they would be doing, and like different smut scenes and stuff.
Mhm.
What would you guys be excited to see? And I won't write it just just based on what they ask for, but if I'm inspired, then I feel like it works, then I will do it. And I think one of them said I would love for Briar to use a toy on Poet. And I was like, I kind of am on board with this. I think I can make. I was hesitant because I was like, oh, I don't. Can I do this in a way that makes sense and like, you know, I've written. Well, I can't say that because that's a spoiler.
We're in the
I
spoiler
can't say that.
section.
I know, but
You can tell us,
it's a
it's okay.
spoiler for a future book that's how do I
Oh.
say this? Okay, so it's not the first time I've written a male scene. And Briar would be basically using a dildo on Poet, taking on the male role. And I, was like, but do I have kind of, I asked myself this sometimes with the male scenes was, do I have the, I guess, authority, since, it's not something I have experience in. And so I was a little bit But then I thought, well, this is from Briar's perspective, so this, makes sense. It's also new for her. I think, yeah, totally. And so let me give it a try, and it was super fun. So it just, yeah, it totally made sense, and I did love that a lot. That was one of the new and exciting moments for them.
That was fun to read, I'll say, like, it definitely was like, "Oh, okay, we're taking their relationship to a new level," and it,
Yes.
like, almost unlocked, like, a piece of Briar that
Mhm.
I don't think I saw before. I was like, "Oh, okay," like, I feel like I know more about Briar now after that scene.
Yeah, and it really shows her eagerness to try different things, and I I also felt like it was kind of almost not overdue, because I think it just takes a while for her to get to that point where she really wants to experiment with toys and stuff. But you see that it's already alluding to it in Trick when she's in the pleasure vault and looking at all the different things.
Mhm.
At that point in Trick, you really get he uses the ribbon on her, which is more teaching her about, and letting her explore her, erogenous zones and things. But to actually use, a more intense toy, she had, that doesn't happen until Burn. Then it happens a couple of times. So yeah, it was super fun. And it makes sense, it's Poet. At some point, this is definitely something that is going to happen. So, between them.
Mhm.
I'm excited to read Burn.
Yeah, I get messages about that one for sure.
Sure, I'll be one of them.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I kind of I got a sense that a lot of people were enthusiastic about it in the group, because they were all I'm team Poet gets pegged. So, people were responding that somebody put it in there, and they were like, "Oh yes, you have to do that." And so I was like, "Okay, cool."
I mean, he's established like very, very early in the first book as I don't know actually if he was technically bisexual, if that was just if that's the way he would label himself, or if that's just the label I'm giving him. But that's established like very early on from when we meet him like
Yes.
in his internal monologue.
Yeah, he is bisexual. I actually had one reader, when the first edition came out, say that she even saw him as pansexual. Um, so that also I could definitely see. So yeah, I mean, Poet is attracted to whoever. Yeah, I feel like he also, yeah, I can't see him having any limits really. He's attracted to who he's attracted to, and it has a lot to do with personality than anything else. And I do have a moment in Dare when Jaren says the same thing, where he alludes to, his preferences are not about looks, it's about intelligence. That's what he finds attractive.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I
So I
think
think, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Poet is very, he's attracted to eroticism and people who are just interesting and intriguing to him. So yeah, I don't feel like he has any limits really.
Will any of the other couples get multiple books like Poet and Briar?
I wish, but I don't have any room in my brain, I think, for that much, because it would make it, if I were to give, for example, Jared and Flair a 3-book thing, and give the next couples each 3 books, it would end up being like a 12-book series. And I think at some point, the world conflict, it would be hard to stretch it out for that long, I think. At least not as I see the plot going. But yeah, I would have to, yeah, I would have to really, really plan that out and be willing to go for quite a number of years on it, I think. And at some point, it's just the muse wants to jump into something new. I always get sad when I say goodbye to couples, though, and I know I will look back and think, I wish I had done more. But, that's always the case with any of the couples. Like I would have wanted to spend more time with Cerulean and Lark, or Puck and Juniper, or Elixir and Cove, and they get that one book, and then the MMCs they all get their perspectives and Defy the Fae. But yeah, I wish, but I can't see it going that way right now. Right now, it's just each couple in the next three books gets their one book. But but Dare is very long, so I'm hoping that helps.
We've said this to multiple authors that come on our podcast now, but you can always start a Patreon and write scenes for funsies, and then we can read them.
This show is the get everyone to make a Patreon show.
Oh, so okay, I see. That's why yeah, maybe. I mean, I never know where, sometimes I don't know where I'm headed. So I get gripped a lot by inspiration. I had wanted to do something with Cypress and Scorpio in Vicious Fairies. This is a spoiler section, right? So
Mhm.
can I talk about Vicious Fairies spoilers if I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so because Scorpio died, this makes it quite difficult to actually write. Makes it a little difficult. I just found that he was just so bad, and I actually liked how bad he was, and I liked how good, and I just loved Cypress, and I wanted him to have a happy ending, and I was sad, like a happy ending where he's with someone.
Mhm.
And I love
He's with
opposites.
God.
Yeah. No, Scorpio is probably with the devil, but hey, most of us are going to go, probably, at least maybe I am. I don't know. For writing all these characters and making the MMCs all villains or morally gray. But no, I wanted Cypress to have someone, and it kind of gutted me a little that I didn't. I almost tried for it in Defy the Fae, and there was just with the way the plot went, no way to make it work where it wouldn't have added so much more, so much greater of a word count, and it would have been too complicated. It would have opened a can of worms, so I couldn't do it. It still lingers in my head a little bit, and I'm like, God, maybe someday I can go back to that universe. It is set up to be an extended universe. I set up my series that way now, so that if I get inspired, I can always go back and do like a spin-off series or something, or just an extra novella or something. And I was like, maybe there's a way to bring Scorpio back to life. It's fairy, fairies can, there's maybe some loophole, but yeah.
That sounds definitely like if you even get if you're only able to get enough inspiration to write a couple chapters, I would personally pay for that Patreon to read that.
Yes, and then there's um the logistical thing of how do I, make that even work, since Cypress is a centaur. Maybe
Oh, that's a good point.
maybe he like shifts. He like comes across something that enables like some sort of magical element or source that allows him to shift. But yeah, he owned my heart when he confessed to Puck how he felt. And I adored him in Hunt the Fae when he said, I want him to be happy. when he said that to Juniper.
Mhm.
I was like, don't do this to me, dude. As I'm writing it, like, God damn it, you're so amazing. And I hate that your heart's broken. And then he says to Puck in Defy the Fae, that he didn't fall in love with Puck because of how Puck treated him. He fell in love with Puck for how he treated other people. How he was like, you didn't capture my heart by seeing how you by the way you touched me. You captured my heart by the way you touch other people, like how you comfort them, how you lift their spirits. I think it was a moment when he witnessed Puck console Tinder about something, and Tinder was a young fairy, and that was
Mhm.
the moment for Cypress. And I thought, oh my God, I hate you because you're now breaking my heart. So it's kind of, it's similar with Elliot's. My husband's really eager for Elliot to find someone. My husband loves Elliot. So it's like,
He's
Elliot,
pushing you a little bit, like, if you think of
yeah,
a scene.
Elliot needs someone. So I'm slowly starting to nudge that a little bit into the series. It won't be anything major, but I want to see him happy.
Um, Sorry to move us back to Foolish Kingdoms. Are you able to tell us how, well, I guess you kind of told us already, but how many years into the future are each of the books past Burn? So, like for Dare and Lion Dream, like what does the timeline look like?
So from the time that Burn ends, do you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so the epilogue of Burn is a year later after the Reaper's Fest riot. Um, at that point, Dare spans 4 years. Dare
Oh.
starts on the night of the Reaper's Fest riot. It rewinds to that moment, even though
Mhm.
Burn is a year later. They rekindle the Reaper's Fest riot, and now that everything's better in autumn, and that's but when Dare starts, it rewinds to the actual riot when Reese finally gets his comeuppance and such.
Mhm.
And we see it from Flair's perspective because Briar and Poet had let Flair go, and um Dare then, yeah, it's about a year. Then you finally, you kind of you speed up and you get to. I'm trying to the timeline's so complicated. So anyway, I'm trying to like work it out in my head. It starts on the Reaper's Fest riot, and then it jumps ahead a year to the epilogue. It's parallel to the epilogue of Burn at that point, and then Jared and Flair's actual story from that moment on is a 4 year span. Um, and I can't tell you why, but suffice it to say they're on that they're isolated together for a very long time. And then more things happen. Lie, I'm still debating on that. Um, like I said, it will be a saga. I need Niku to be minimum 21 years old
Mhm.
when Dream starts. And so there's a time jump between Dare and Lie, and then there's another time jump between Lie and Dream. And that's
Okay.
kind of what I'm trying to figure out. And it all is contingent on what ages I need to Niku to be in Lie and Dream. That's really what it's going to come down to. And it also comes down to what age I need Aspen to be, because she and Air are an age gap trope. So I'm working out that right now, to decide how much is too much of an age gap and how much is not enough of an age gap, essentially. And yeah, versus, all of that, like when does life start? How old is Aspen and all that kind of, all those details. But I would say that, the easiest way to do it is the easier way is just the overarching from Trick, beginning of Trick to the end of Dream. We're talking Niku was 4. It ends when he's about 22, so about 18 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, that was a little bit complicated because I'm still trying to figure it all myself.
No worries. That makes sense about the age gap too, like trying to figure out the
Yes.
like you're like skating a line of, like you said, like what's too much and what's too little, and like minimum ages of
Hmm.
Aspen and whatnot. So, but I'm
Yeah, because
excited for that one.
she's pretty young in the in the initial books, and then by the time you get to the end of Dare, unless I make a change in the next 2 days because I have to get this, I'm basically wrapping up the last edits now. Um, I'm thinking she's possibly 17 by the end of Dare, and then
Oh.
Lie jumps a significant amount of years. We're talking she's in her early to mid 20s by the time Lie
Oh.
starts. And Air is about 10 years older is what I'm thinking. So, you know, uh but I do emphasize in the end of Dare that Air is not looking at this girl in any way that is romantic at this point. He will not start looking at her that way until we're into Lie when she is much older.
Mhm.
Yeah. But, it's just a matter of figuring out those tiny little details. And it all comes down to how old should Aspen be? How old does Niku need to be? That kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Mhm.
What's the age difference between Niku and Aspen?
He's 10 by the end of Dare, and she's like
Oh, okay.
17. So it's about 7 years.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, if I keep it to that, yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can do it just this was one of her questions, so I don't wanna word it incorrectly, but she was really interested about the juxtaposition of Poet being a single teen dad and
Mhm.
also, like, such a pivotal role in the court, being a jester, um, and just the fact that we don't really see a lot of fantasy or just stories in general about single teen dads, so, she's wondering more if you can tell us a bit more about the juxtaposition of those roles and what inspired Poet's story and, like, his background, which I think you touched on a little bit earlier, but we're in the spoiler section, so you can tell us more now.
Yeah. Um, so in this edition, I think he's because I nudged their ages up. Um, I want to say I can't remember, it's 21, 22 in Trick, and Niku's 4 years old, about 4 years old. So he had him when he was 17, 18.
Mhm.
Um, and, and it is a really interesting, there's an interesting line between his identity as a father and his identity as a jester in the court. It's quite divided. Um, and I think in his role as a jester, that very promiscuous side comes out from a few things. His simple lust for eroticism and his appreciation for it. It comes from, him being with a lot of people. It comes from that. It comes from also some underlining loneliness. because ironically, even though he's the rock star of that court, no one knows really who he is or his deepest secrets until he meets Briar. And he also uses it as a tool for deception because people reveal secrets in bed, and he can keep his enemies closer that way. He can potentially use that to his advantage later because he has this plan to sway the monarchy slowly in favor of born souls. So anything he can use to do that, he will. So I think those three things come from that. When he's with Niku, he's just 100% a father. What makes it difficult is more when he's navigating something that is so personal to him. This conflict is really personal to him, and that's why he gets into that fight with Briar in the bell tower, because she's handling this a lot differently than he is. She's at this point not a parent to Niku, even though she loves the boy. She's seeing this as a monarch. She's trying to navigate this terrain politically, and he's handling it very personally, even when he is very clever. I think it's one of those moments where he's not infallible, and he's really passionate about this subject, and it makes for a good balance between them because they learn how to balance out each other's strengths in that way. But it takes a while. So the more intense their relationship gets, and the more they start to campaign, as they do in Trick, the harder it is for him to rein in certain things he's been able to otherwise, keep control of. And that's why the outburst happens and everything in the round table. Yeah. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question? I'm not 100% sure I did.
Yeah, you answered at least what I was wondering, because I just thought it was such an interesting division that we see. And Briar makes the distinction in Trick. She's like, oh, everything about him is like softer, and like she can see right away everything he does is for his son. And then they go back to court, and she's like, I feel like, she's like, obviously, like, I know this person. She's like, I can't believe this was the secret.
Yes. Yeah. You don't expect it, for sure. And I really love that, how much sense it makes, though. At least when she's, at the beginning, she's describing the two types of so-called fools, and Poet's in that position where he's the type of quote-unquote fool that everybody loves and admires and desires, and his son, sadly, is representing the side that is the scorned fool. I really dislike using that word, but that's what it is. So at least from this world's perspective. And it's a very difficult one to navigate, I think, for him. And he's been doing it for many years on his own. So now he's got to learn how to do it with someone who has a vested interest, but her experience is more as a royal dealing with other royals. It is quite a surprise, but I love that it somehow still makes sense because of the fact that he and Niku are connected. They're opposite sides of this spectrum of what's considered a fool. So there's quite some irony there as well.
One of my favorite parts of Ruin is they've already gotten into the fight in Briar's chambers in her bedroom, where she says mine, not ours, and that's what the mic drop moment is. She goes, when Poet walks out. He goes, basically says, I thought this was ours, not yours. And he walks out. And then she's in there. She's still doing, what the right thing is to do and spending time with his son and trying to fix things. And then she promises to take, is it Niku?
Yeah.
Is that that's how you've been saying it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. She promises to take Niku to the wheat fields.
Mm-hmm.
And Poet just like flips out. He freaks out on her, and she's like, that was like the moment where he was like, yeah, but I'm his dad and you're not. And she was like, oh. That was like one of my favorite moments in the whole entire book so far, is them having that fight and realizing that that's not the way to like actually fix things at all. And they both are like, we shouldn't have said those things.
Right. I mean, she almost catches herself. She's still, at this point, she really wants to be his mother. But I think part of her is restraining herself from identifying as that, because she doesn't even know if she has the right or the, permission. But she naturally wants to bond with him and show him her kingdom and do things with him. And Poet has always been so used to guarding his son so carefully, going from Nico spending his whole life hiding, him hiding his son, to being out in the open and having someone else interacting with him, and having to change the whole structure of how he's protected, with Air guarding him and having to trust Air and other people like, the Queen, all these people who really care about him, but are perhaps not trained to even know how, because Niku also has a condition. So there's also that on top of his safety and all these other things, and Poet having to share his role as a parent when he's never had to do that before with anyone other than Ginny. It's quite a lot, and it's quite a bit for him to reconcile. But Briar, I think, sees that, and she doesn't want to push it too much when she's not sure if she's earned the right. And that's why she almost slips and almost says, and I'm his mother, when he says, I'm his father. And she catches herself, and then Poet has a completely different reaction, though. He's like, at that point, he's just like, it's another moment when he falls in love with her even more, because he hears what she was about to almost say. And later in Burn, we are doing spoilers, right? So in Burn, because this is a big spoiler, when he proposes to her, I think later at some point they discuss, they talk about her being Niku's mother, and she looks at him while he's sleeping, I think it is, and she says he'll decide. Like, he gets, she's gonna let Niku decide when to call her mom. And not push that on him, not automatically assume that's how Niku's going to feel, because it's also about him.
For someone who is so incredibly vocal about like not liking surprise kids, like as a trope, which that's me. That's not a hero trope. I like found that out, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, and I love him. I adore his role in the story. I think he's a really, really interesting character, and just like with Briar, he just like wormed his way into my heart. So I love him.
Yeah, he's a real sweetheart. And I have to say, I was a little bit nervous about that, because I know that's a trope that is difficult. I think the fact that it wasn't he's a little bit older, and I do kind of, I keep it I don't have scenes in him like a ton. I have just enough, I think, a balance where he's there, and he's his character's evolving, and Briar's with him, and Poets, but not where it overtakes the story, and the romance doesn't take a back seat to it. It just kind of blends in all seamlessly, like a lot of other things that are happening in their relationship are happening. But and yeah, it's every decision they make, he's the forefront of every single one of them. As a matter of fact, when I had beta and sensitivity readers, which I do for each of these books, some of them would even point out places in the book. I remember with specifically with Ruin and Burn, when they're in autumn as a family finally, that they would mention at this point, I would imagine that they would check on Niku before doing this next thing. For example, like when they spy on when they go and infiltrate the master's hideout. You know, people say that it would be helpful if you mention here that they made sure that he was everything about who was going to look out for him and who was going to keep an eye on him and, you know, guard him and stuff while they're away. You know, that was all taken care of. So that really helped to remind me where I needed to, that's always going to be their number one priority in any given moment.
I also loved the addition of air into the group into like his
so glad.
Yeah, and it was just like just the little detail like, oh yeah, I had a brother.
Yes.
Who died when I was a kid, but I had a brother. And so he's like, they're like, oh, I can trust him. And he was nice to him on the journey and all of these other things. I was just like, oh, that's actually really nice that they do have an additional person besides just like her mom that they can trust.
Yeah, he's just such a good man and the real epitome of the honorable, dutiful, you know, knight. And I love how quickly he just, you know, connects with Niku, and it shows that you have, you know, a lot of these characters, they have their secrets, and him admitting and having the courage and the trust to admit, I had a little brother like him, maybe not exactly the same condition, but in a similar situation, that explains a lot. And it just shows how many people in these courts are perhaps, you know, everybody's more connected with this subject matter than they think. But yeah, he's so I love him so much. I love writing, you know, the contrast between him and Poet, him being so grumpy. He's the grumpy but good knight, and I love that because it leads into his trope with Aspen, which would be grumpy sunshine. And yeah, he's fantastic.
Because I was like, he gets his own book, right?
He does, yes. It's book 5.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll meet Aspen pretty soon, but she's quite young at the time, because of the age gap. As a matter of fact, I needed to I wanted to adjust her age for Dare just a slight bit, like a year or two, and I realized I would have to, because I already kind of had Poet guessing in Burn what her age was. I was talking to beta and sensitivity reader recently, and I said, you know, I think I need to just put in Dare a little bit of an indication that Poe and Briar were just a little bit off, because she needs to just be bumped just a little bit older. But you will meet her in Ruin, I think, is when she first turns up.
Oh, I have a question about who she is then.
Oh, of course, she is going under a different name. Oh, you're reading Ruin, so she is. You want to know?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Okay. I would love to
know. So she's someone. She's the kid who is the axe-wielding assassin.
That's what I was wondering when you said there was an age gap. I was like, oh, is that who that is?
Yes. And so right now she's I think Poet says, oh, she's probably around 10. And I just did the timeline and I went over and I was like, I need to make her a little bit older. So I'm going to have to have a moment when it's pointed out in Dare that Poet and Briar, which is a little bit off. It's not in, a wildly different, but I needed to make that so that the ages kind of line up. This is one of those things when you don't plan all of the little particulars in your series in advance, which I can't imagine doing that. That's just, wow. Hats off to anybody who can do that and have everything be really tight. Sometimes you have to adjust in future books to make it work. That happens too.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm even more excited. I mean, I was excited before because I loved him, but I'm even more excited now because I thought she was a really compelling character, like the little bit that I've seen of her.
Yes.
I thought she was a really compelling character. So
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, she's really feisty. And quite a little spitfire, and continues to be as the series progresses. She's got a great kind of feminine warrior vibe to her, but at the same time, I love the balance between that and her. She is, for people who've read the first editions, they know that she turns out to be also a very, flirty kind of, she has quite some moxie and she has quite a tongue on her. So she's a little bit, if you've read Vicious Faeries, she's got a bit of lark in her as well.
Ooh.
But at the time she gets to that age, she's definitely, yeah, more feisty, and yet at the same time a real badass when it comes to weapons and stuff like that, and someone who has a passion for crafting weapons and wielding weapons, which I love about her. She'd be the type that would be excited to wear girly girl clothes, for lack of a better description. Very delicate, pretty clothes, I guess, but also at the same time want to, explore the armory more than any other room in the castle.
I can't wait. I can't wait to get to her story.
I
I also
know
can't
me
wait.
either.
I can't wait for August 14 to read Dare. I'm so
Yes,
excited.
I'm so glad.
It's
I'm
coming.
Yeah, I started working on it back in January. It's been the longest project that I've had in a very long time. This was just such a complicated one. It's a really, really complicated one in terms of the representation in it. And having you get the point of view of the opposition from Poet and Briar. You get the point of view of someone who believes, as most of the continent does, and even in a harsher way. He is not a good man in the beginning, and it's very, very much a villainous streak that he has. I mean, he has his own hidden demons and some secrets that have to do with the FMC, but it's a lot more intense in terms of the enemies to lovers and the dark elements and the intolerance, for sure. So that was quite nerve-wracking, because this is not a character you should want to like, but my sensitivity and beta readers have all assured me that he is perfectly capable of winning someone's heart once you get to know him, and that was quite a relief, because yeah, he's quite a controversial character, the Prince of Winter.
One of my favorite female characters is quite unlikable. So the characters who you think are not particularly likable, I'm sure they're going to capture the right people's hearts.
I love writing about those characters. I love writing. I love all my characters to have flaws. All of them do in some way. I just find that arc so compelling. I can't write about somebody who's just 100% good. Even Air, he's a very good man. But I'm sure when I get to Lie, I will find some things that he's not, and characters that just, make mistakes, because that's what I relate to as just a person. If a person's completely good and perfect and has never done anything wrong and learned from it, for example, I can't connect with that character. And I really want to see the change in them. So this is probably the most, I feel personally, like, this is the riskiest character of this entire ensemble. He says things and does things more that he says things, but he also does things that were very hard to write and quite uncomfortable. At the same time, I absolutely adore him. So I hope other people do too once the once he starts to thaw.
Like when you're 4 books deep, like if you've made it to the 4th book, you probably have a little faith in the author's process.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that I hope so. But you know, I've written this character before, so I am coming from a
Yeah.
place where I've been with him for a while. So I went deeper, and he's next level villain for sure. But I have, you know, he's not a completely new character for me, so I had that foundation to already go off of. So yeah. But I think it was really important to write him, and you know, every time that I was like, oh, I hate that he's saying something like this, but it was necessary because it would have been untrue to this world if you didn't have someone who was raised with this mindset speak in any way that was, you know, where I was dialing it down, because that's just not, it's not authentic to who he is, and the transformation that he undergoes by the end is a lot more, it's a lot more intense for that reason, a lot more rewarding, because it gives you that hope. If this person can change, there's quite some hope for this group of revolutionaries, essentially, to really make a bigger change.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm definitely super excited, and it's always so much more satisfying too when you have to, like, trudge through the parts of a character that you really hate, and you're like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
god," like, I know it's gonna pay off, I know it's gonna pay off, and it hurts a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's just so satisfying when you get to that arc and you're like, "Oh, here it is, and here's what I've been waiting for this whole time."
Yes, and I mean, he is a super juicy character. I mean, I love writing villains, and uh by the time you get to his point of view, which I think is chapter 3 in Dare, he has such a enigmatic and compelling voice. It is a lot different from Poet. It is cold, it is cruel, it is calculating, it's scientific, it's the voice of not only a prince, but a physician, a doctor, and someone who comes from the most imposing court of all of them, and the most vicious and aloof court. It is the strongest court and most powerful court in all of the seasons, in terms of its army, in terms of its advancement in technology and all these things. So, and he's at the you know he's the leader of it alongside his two queen grand aunts, who are the queens, but he has as much of a he has much of a role in that kingdom as they do. So I am very excited also for people, and I hope they love it. It's a little bit intimidating to follow up Poet with him. It's a little bit intimidating to follow up Poet and Briar with a new couple, especially when that couple only gets one book
Mhm.
to make you fall in love with them. And I hope they do, though. I certainly did.
Well, I know we can't wait. You'll probably see Harley and I in your DMs crying,
Yeah.
shouting
Yes.
shouting nicely.
Disrespectfully.
For sure. For sure. You can send me your theories if you want. There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of magical mystery in this one. It's you're going into summer. You get a glimpse of winter. Winter's full on in book 6, but you get some of winter in this, and you get this fantasy rainforest that's really dark and lush and dangerous but beautiful. You get the shipwreck, that there's a shipwreck, there's ancient ruins, there's jaguars and all these things, and there's isolation. It's very much for them an isolation story. It was the only way you can get these two to remotely work together without killing each other, even though that threat happens quite a few times. He's like, we need to work together and survive this place. We don't stab each other first. It's like that kind of vibe. So it's fun. I hope you guys like it.
I have no
Sure we
doubt.
will. Yeah, I have no doubt either.
I'm ready. I'm already writing my 5-star review in my head.
Yeah, literally.
Aw.
Is there anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up, let you go for the evening?
Oh my goodness. I'm staring out my window trying to think. Just that I hope people love Dare when it comes out, and it's coming out in, oh gosh, 9 days. So definitely, if you haven't continued with Poe and Briar's story into Dare, to do that, jump on Ruin, and when you get to Ruin, you're gonna have a hard time stopping. So you'll want to for sure jump into Burn and then Dare. So just that, just continue to read the series, and I hope that everybody loves it.
I know you were at Steamy LitCon recently. Do you have any other events coming up or even
Yeah.
into next year?
So I'm signing at Barnes and Noble in Glendora, California on August 31st from 1 to 4. And then I'm going to be at Romanticycon in downtown LA in February of 2025. And that one I'm really excited about because so many romantasy authors are coming to that one. It's going to be quite huge, and so many friends that I've never met in person will finally be there. So I think that's going to be quite amazing.
Oh, that's so exciting. I know I'm gonna be there. I think Harley's gonna be
Oh,
there. Yep.
cool.
We'll definitely come see you. That's gonna be so fun.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I would love that. And I'll probably have all kinds of goodies at my table, I think, for sure.
I have a question about that. So I know you had the Trick special editions at
Mm-hmm.
StimulatCon because my friend got me one when she was there. Are you going to have
Oh,
special editions of any of the other books?
I have no idea. Maybe. Um,
I know that's a long way off. I was just curious.
I don't know. I will definitely have the Trick ones there, but I don't know about anything else because I don't have anything planned right now. I will say that there are a couple book boxes that are coming out um, soon, quite soon. So Bookish and Spice is doing special editions, and uh, who else? Twisted Fiction. So those are coming out fairly soon. I can't say when because they haven't announced anything.
Okay.
But that's it right
I wrote
now.
it.
I wish I could have made the foiled edition accessible to everybody because I'm not necessarily, I want all my readers to have a chance to get any beautiful editions out there, or at least have, the equal opportunity to do it. But unfortunately, it's not easy to find a platform that does foiled editions that can just sell and
Yeah.
distribute for you. So Amazon doesn't do it. Ingram Spark, who handles the expanded distribution to like Barnes and Noble and other bookstores, doesn't have that option. So it's really would be me ordering them and just selling them direct. And since I have 12 different jobs wrapped up into one, it's impossible. Hopefully I can do a non-foiled version on Amazon, depending on what Amazon allows. And then it's the logistics of getting those books designed, when I can do that, and all of that stuff. That would be quite lovely if I can manage it. But I am paying attention to the desire readers have for beautiful books inside and outside. And that will affect my decisions as I move forward with rebranding Selfish Myths and also with my vampire series. this is something that I will keep in mind.
Well, thank you for coming on our podcast. We appreciate you spending so much time with us, and
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was fun.
it was a lot of fun. Thank you. Well, definitely, if you ever want to come again, whenever Lie or Dream start to come out, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to have you again.
I would love that. Thank you so much. And thank you for tolerating how much I talk. I can go on to
we love it.
tangents. Okay.
We love it. We love it. I think we had like a 3-hour long podcast episode once
Oh
with
my God.
one of our author friends. So
We're close right now.
yeah, and we're getting close. So I was like,
close.
oh, are we gonna have a new record for our longest podcast?
But okay.
We love to chat. We love to chit chat. So
Sheila can yap forever, lovingly.
yeah.
She knows that I love her so much. She can yap forever.
So yeah, never feel bad about talking on our podcast.
Yeah. It's easy when it's about books too.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Wait, pause. Before we go really quick, Natalia, did you say what your like website or your Instagram or anything is? Did we ask you that already?
Oh no. So I'm really easy to find. I'm nataliajaster.com. And if you go there, there is a newsletter link. And you can, if you sign up for my newsletter, you will get a couple of digital downloads of exclusive NSFW artwork of Poet and Briar that you can't get anywhere else. So there's that. I mean, unless you no, actually, there is no other place. It's just newsletters exclusive. The only exception would maybe be if you're at a conference, I might have some art prints there of it as a special thing, but otherwise, that's there. And all my books are there. God, what is my Instagram? It's Natalia Jaster, I think. Just like, is it Natalia Jaster author or Natalia Jaster? Let me actually look. I should know this off the top of my head. I believe it's just Natalia Jaster, and then TikTok is Natalia Jaster author, so pretty easy. I mostly also, I would say a lot of the times I'm more posting on Instagram and Instagram stories than on TikTok because it's just so hard to it's hard to actually come up with content for TikTok, and I'm not quite sure what I'm doing there half the time. Like I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing if it sticks. So I'm mostly on Instagram, and I'm also in my Facebook group as well. So there are quite a few places you can find me.
Well, then we will find you. Listeners will find you. We'll get in your DMs. We'll yell at you. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm always excited to hear from people, and I do respond. Sometimes it takes me a little bit. I'm a little bit quicker on Instagram, but emails, for example, it will take me a little bit more these days to get back to you, but I will because I enjoy hearing from people. So yes, definitely send me your reading progress. It's the only way I know what readers are thinking. I don't read my reviews. I just look at at the most the average rating the first few days of release, and then I just kind of step away because I'm too terrified of those kind of things. So I don't really get a sense unless somebody messages me or somebody posts something nice on Instagram or in the Facebook group, that sort of thing. That's the only way I know. So a lot of authors, including myself, it makes our day, really does, when we hear from people about our books and hear something, hear some nice reactions, even if it's that we're torturing you. We I like it.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Have a good night.
You
Bye,
too.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. Follow us on Instagram at Bound and Book Podcast. My personal Instagram is at Undercover Fae.
You can find me over at HJK Reads. That's my initials. It's a fun time over there.
And you can find me at Nancy Reads and Writes on Instagram as well.
Thanks for reading with us, motherfuckers. Bye.
Bye.
I am